Mondays with Mark Allen. Welcome back. This is the first episode of Road to St. George. There's going to be a lot of them. I'm going to be talking about the road to St. George, Utah in May, where the IRONMAN World Championships 2021 will be taking place in 2022. This race, to me, there's so many aspects of it that are exciting, unique. It's the first IRONMAN World Championship that will take place outside of the Hawaiian Islands ever in the history of the sport of triathlon. That in itself is something unique, and I'll be talking a lot about the differences between the two courses in some of the future episodes. But what I want to highlight today for you and why I'm doing this series, Road to St. George, I think it's going to be the most complex race to win anywhere in 2022. The most complex event to win in triathlon, and especially at the Ironman distance. Why is that? A couple of things. The last time the Ironman World Championship took place was in October 2019. That's 3 years ago. A lot has changed in 3 years. Think about yourself 3 years ago, physically, emotionally, mentally, who you were then, who you are today. What about the pros, the men, the women? Some of them have gotten older. Some of the young ones have come up with their abilities. None of them have raced each other en masse since 2019 at a full Ironman distance race. Yes, there have been some classic battles. We had the Tri-Battle Royale with Lionel Sanders, Jan Frodeno. We had Lionel again against Sam Long competing in Ironman Coeur d'Alene. There's been a lot of individual races where there's been some great matchups, but it's only one or two or three people. Lucy Charles and Daniela Ryf have not raced each other in an Ironman since 2019. That's 3 years. Do you think the two of them have changed in that amount of time? Absolutely. That is what's one of the things that's going to make this race very, very complex, is that every athlete who has raced in Kona has a memory of what that big competition feels like. What happened then is not what's going to happen in 2022. Each one of the athletes is going to have to adapt to athletes who they have never maybe even competed against before in a full distance race. Gustav Iden, Christian Blumenfeld. I mean, the list is huge. On top of that, it's a course that none of the athletes has mastered the same way that they have in Kona. Nobody has raced that course with history like we have seen in Kona. If you are a newcomer going to the Ironman World Championship in October 2022 in Hawaii, you have years and years of footage you can look back at. You can see the course. You can understand how athletes have explained their strategies of how to have a great race there. That's not available for May in St. George. That means that the athletes are going to have to come up with a race template that nobody has done before. It will be interesting to see who's done their homework about the course. Some of the athletes have raced in St. George before. Some of them were at Ironman 70.3 Worlds this past September. They have experience on the course, but none of them has raced each other and every single other top athlete in the world on that course. It is going to be the athlete who not only is prepared to win physically, but is also willing to adapt their strategy on the day based on what is actually happening on a course that none of them has done all together. And you know how that is. If there's one or two people you're watching in an event, you can kind of key off of them. But when the entire world's best are at a race, the dynamic can be completely different than anything you thought you were going to have to experience or deal with or manage. That's something else that's going to make it very, very complex. The Ironman is finalizing their course. I should have an update on what the actual course is going to be fairly soon, and I'll go into depth on how I think the ideal strategy would be to race that. But until then, everyone who's going to be racing in May is probably thinking, okay, I've got to figure this out. I've got to figure out the hills. I've got to figure out the flats. I've got to figure out how to go uphill and downhill on a marathon and have it be pounding. How am I going to get ready for that? Very complex. Also, there's going to be a lot of athletes that have developed in this COVID time, and they have fitness that nobody's really seen or experienced. That adds to complexity. And the final thing that's going to add to the complexity of this is that it's a big, big race in May. It is much harder to win a big race in May than it is to win a big race at the end of the season. And here's why. If you are racing an entire triathlon season, you pace yourself. Those who win Kona have peaked their fitness in October. They don't have that same peak of fitness in May. If they do, it's very hard to maintain it all the way through October. So in history, most athletes who win in October have been building their fitness throughout the season. But that means that there are going to be other athletes who they started early and they don't care. They're going to give everything they have in May. Where are you going to be? Where is each pro going to be on that level of seasonal fitness versus just frigging going for it in St. George because maybe they don't feel like they have a real shot of winning in Kona and they don't care. They want to win a world championship and they want to do it in May in St. George, IRONMAN World Championship. That is another level of complexity. I could go on forever, but I think you're starting to see that this race is going to be one that's going to be very, very difficult to win, very challenging, but super exciting to follow. Road to St. George, you're going to hear a lot from me on this topic. I will be talking to athletes. I'll be giving my thoughts. I'll be analyzing performances and fitness as they build into this race. Maybe we'll see a couple exciting pre-race races coming up in the springtime. For sure, we'll see some of that. And I'll be giving my predictions as we get closer, of course. Road to St. George, Mondays with Mark Allen. I hope you're having a great year. It's going to be an amazing one.